that.
And hi, Doris.
Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Where are you speaking from, Doris?
I'm speaking from Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay.
Hi. Yeah.
So we at the moment we don't have very many. There are just the five of us. And we don't know how many are joining. A lot of people have registered, but with all the competition, you know, with so many sessions going on, we don't
And the
know
nice
how many
weather.
will join. Pardon?
And the nice weather.
And the nice weather too, yeah. But I think so many of us are really committed to the Catalyzing Change Week. It's just, you know, for all of us, it's quite demanding, isn't it? It's trying to fit your own work in around the week. But nevertheless, we will, whoever joins, we'll see how we get on. But it's very nice to see Doris and Jessica.
Yeah, let's give it another few minutes, couple of minutes, so that we see if we're joined by others. Andrea, what do you say?
Yeah.
I
just
show you a quick video to promote Catalyzing Change Week, and then I give you the floor.
Go on then.
Wait.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week. This year's Catalyzing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, bio multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I would encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalyzing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week.
Okay.
Thank you. So.
Well, it's always good to celebrate the work that has been done and see friendly faces on this video. What do you say, Andrea? Should we get started?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So you've seen we are aiming to have a very, very relaxed session. Like we're inviting you for drink, for tea inside of the comfort of a shared distributed living room, and to have a conversation about what it is, right? For us to work with government and like the ebb and flows, like what's hard, what's working, what we're hoping to do, and so on. So before I let Andrea frame a bit the conversation, I would like to ask you, please to switch your cameras on if you're comfortable, because it's always better to be able to see each other, beautiful smiles and faces. Yes, thank you. Nice to see you, Brenda. Jessica, Doris, and Joe, if we could see you, that would be great. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you all, and Doris and Jessica. So, Andrea, I'm just letting you by handing over to you because you wanted to frame a bit the conversation, and then just like go ahead and have an open forum and share together, learn to each other, and have a nice time.
Thanks, Valeria. Our organisation, Riders for Health, has been working very closely with government in the Gambia, Lesotho, Malawi, Nigeria,
Andrea,
Liberia.
lagging a bit. Could you start again, please?
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me at the moment? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my organization, Riders for Health, has been working with government for many years in Lesotho, Malawi, Liberia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and our belief is that you can make change if you don't work with government, but you can't make systemic change that
Andrea,
yes.
Andrea properly, or is it just me?
I can hear properly, so...
Can you hear Andrea well, or is it...
Okay.
Yeah, you're hearing Andrea well? Okay, no interruption. Okay, so sorry. Yeah, it's just me. Go ahead. Sorry,
Our belief is that you can of course make change if you don't work with government, but to have your initiative deeply rooted in the countries in which you work, we believe that you can't make that sort of systemic change or deep-rooted organizations that will survive without working with government. And it would be really good to hear from each of you, or those of whom want to speak, about what your view of working with government, whether you already work with government and the challenges of that, whether you would like to work with government and the challenges of trying to start that procedure, and any other aspect of working with government. We'd love to hear from you. Anyone? Brenda.
Well, I don't mind jumping in because I guess I should preface this by saying that that I'm based in Canada, and I'm the co-chair of the Canadian chapter. But my personal work has been on systemic collaboration, which involves not only doing our best to work with government, but bringing into the picture nonprofits and business and citizens. So I'm doing my darndest to work with government, particularly at the local level, because that's where a lot of my work is, at the grassroots level, and connecting the grassroots to the grass tops. But it's very frustrating. It's very slow. And I'm not sure I have found very many people that I would truly define as leaders. So maybe that's, and I'm a Pollyanna. I'm very positive, but that's my personal experience.
Are there things about, I mean, what's wonderful about what you're saying is you're bringing in all aspects, the community, the NGOs, the government, so you're not leaving any players out. Do you think there are any lessons that you've learned, or that could help people who've never worked with government, or the challenges that you probably share with the rest of us?
Yeah, I think what needs to be a driver, and this has been a hard-earned lesson, is really putting citizens and as consumers of government and supporters of government into a driving position, and helping them find their voices, and encouraging local government especially to listen and engage citizens at the very beginning of an initiative, rather than partway through projects. I think that was a significant learning. And I've also learned the hard way about the importance of policy, because I assumed government would do the right thing and would see the big picture, and they truly don't. So it's about, I mean, I think, it just seems everywhere people are saying, the systems are broken. And we need to look at our communities and the world much more holistically, but we're still very silo-based. And the challenge is that even if you think and agree that we need to work more collaboratively, whose job is it to pull everybody to the table? So we're still really grounded in policy and funding and leadership competencies that are designed for silo-based systems.
I think it's a very interesting point that you're making, Brenda, and I wanted to emphasize the fact that when you're speaking about the time scale we're looking at. I mean, this is something that is, I think, a key element to understand when it comes to developing relationships with government and like planning for outcomes and results that I think take time, right? We don't think the same way in terms of like how we plan our roadmaps. We don't move with the same agility. We don't have the same kind of institutional layers to go through. So I think that's something that we, as number small organizations or small, more or less, right? Because some are very big organizations, like Andreas, for example, we need to be keeping in mind, right? Governments, they move slow. Even if when they're fast for a government, right? It's time that is slower. And they also move strictly within the confine of their mandates, right? So that's something that I think is really important to understand, especially when we're speaking, because you spoke of policy. We're speaking of, like, when we speak of policy, we're speaking of influencing those policies, not helping them being drafted, incorporating languages that we want so that we have a great language that serves us. And so then they can be translated into the funding, the programs and so on that we need to achieve our objectives. Those, they always come within mandates that are themselves based, by the way, on this shared language, right? So there's a constant need of collaboration with government that can be much less structured, right, than what we think. Because often I think when people think of working with government, they might be thinking of like strictly the official channels and the rigid programs and like difficult pathways and so on. But a lot of working with government, at least from my experience, is having conversations, right? Anywhere that you can, and constant conversations, right? Establishing a trust-based, mutually beneficiary relationship that is about like shared objective and shared respect and consideration for the other part, right? Not us looking down on them or them looking down on us, right? Really eye to eye. And having those exchange continue over email, over coffee, over like anything, right? But just constantly being in touch. I think it's something that is important. And then this is why I see that things catch speed. Because it's your counterpart that is reaching out, right? It's not the things that necessarily put out there and so on, but we're working on that, and so on, can you come at a forum? We're working on that, can you share that through your network? Hey, what do you know about that? You know, that kind of stuff. So that's for them, the policy a bit. I don't know if you have something to offer on that perspective, and around like the speed at which working with government happens, because you're more on the programmatic and like delivery side.
Yeah, it is very slow. I just wonder, Andrew, do you already work with government?
Andre, are you inviting me in?
Yes, please.
Cool. Thank you. It's really nice to be here. I'm calling in from South Africa. I work for a social enterprise called Rios Partners. Rios, R-E-O-S, Partners. And we help a group of stakeholders who have a shared challenge to move forward together. People typically think of us as enabling, collaboration and trying to bridge the collaboration gap. We have done this in very polarized context. My colleague Adam Kehen has written extensively about this, and we're facilitating a process in Colombia. We have done work in South Africa. Basically, our work involves transforming systems. And I think I agree with the basic premise that governments are integral to sustainable transformation of systems. However, I think in my experience, they can only do so much. Governments, as you said rightly, they're very interested in policy. And policies, are helpful in the sense of helping to scale up initiatives. But we see that the sort of problems that that are confronted or that we are trying to solve, the social challenges, whether it's beyond gender-based violence or addressing climate challenges or water resilient issues in Africa, which are areas or some of the areas that I've worked on, or energy transition, just energy transition. I think what the other ingredient that is required is change of mindsets, and typically people, the problems are held stuck by particular mindsets. And if people do not begin to change that, and then we work at scaling deep, I think, how do we enable new values? How do we change, certain cultural beliefs? How do we, create new meaning, create new narratives, and then try to deepen or embed that into the system.
And how do you see the role of government in this, Andrew, in this mindset change?
I think government hasn't really, in my experience, government helps us to scale up initiatives. They can get into the realm of policies. But I guess given that they are always met with a lot of priorities, which oftentimes are competing, they do not really have time to do the deeper work, the work that is required to change mindset and change values. One could argue that, if you change policies, then over time, people will begin to act and behave differently. I think, there's always a need for targeted intervention there. And here we rely on strong conveners, and we help people to convene processes well that can, attack or address these various levels of, maybe scaling up, out, and deep. It feels to me that there is, hence, I guess, why we work with diverse groups of people. And this might be, in our premises that these people do not need to like or trust each other. You cannot just bring your friends to the table and find solutions. We have worked, and particularly with groups that are stuck. People who do not like each other, do not trust each other, do not see the problem the same way. However, it's required that people come together, to address whatever challenge that they're facing.
And from my point of view, Andrew, I in a way, I suppose I see social enterprise and social entrepreneurs as people who are there really to do mind changing. It is to do with changing people's minds, changing people's perceptions. And that's a long, long task. And, that coupled with the fact that government works slowly anyway, the fact that we're coming along and asking people to change their minds is going to be a slow process. I just wondered, Doris, is there, do you work with government in Kenya?
Yes, actually very closely. I work for a nonprofit called Refugee. We support refugee girls and young women in Nairobi, Kenya. So a lot of our interactions are actually with the government, because we're trying to make it comfortable for refugees to be able to, thrive within the country, because a lot of them are not able to go back to their home countries. So we need to make it very, very viable for them to be here, to thrive, especially we focus on economic empowerment and on mental health. So we partner a lot with the government because of especially documentation. We do a lot of advocacy with the government to make sure that the refugees that we have in our programs are able to get documentation, to be able to really manage to be within the country, because without documentation, there's a lot of harassment from the police and everything. So we do a lot of sensitizations with even the police, just to, to inform them more, create awareness on what are the rights of refugees. They are also human beings like any other citizen in Kenya, so they have certain human rights. So we do a lot of that. And over time, we've had that change of mindset with government. Well, what we've done is we've created more of a partnership relationship with the government, rather than them more of demanding things from us. It's become more of a partnership or more collaboration. How we've gone around that is we've been able to engage government at all levels, not just going to the very top office. We started at the grassroots levels, looking at the county officials, trying to get buy-in from them. That has helped us a lot. So by the time we're even getting the messaging up there to the very top office in government, they already have an idea of what we've been doing throughout. And then our area we've been, another strategy we've been using is we've been trying to get a feel of what are their priority areas and then trying to match our program to those priority areas. And then we invite them to some of those meetings, we give them a session to talk, so it makes them feel involved, and it's no longer an acro, it becomes more of a partnership. And they're actually sometimes even reaching out to us and telling us, we have this priority in our budget. How can you chip in? How can you? So a lot of times working together has really helped. Just collaborating and especially starting at the very bottom has really helped us to get the ear of the government, really. And so for us, it has been quite good. The only challenge we've been having is it can be a bit slow, especially at the top when we're trying to get operationalization of policy, because we've been advocating a lot for policies that are pro-refugee, like, for example, right to work and getting the right documentation to work. We've gotten that already even enacted in an act of parliament, so it is within the law. They have the right to work in Kenya, but now getting that operationalized has been quite a problem. It is very slow and bureaucratic. So it takes a lot of patience and being not giving up, really, just going over and over and over again to the offices, reminding them we still have this is the law. How can we help you to operationalize? Which aspects do you want to start operationalizing? How can we support in that particular area? So for us, collaborating with government has been more, we are the ones to take that initiative. They won't take it. So you come in and you give them a potential solution and then they buy into it. But waiting for them, it's not been a workable approach for us. So we've been the ones going, taking that first step all the time. Yeah.
Do you think it makes a difference though, because the work that you're doing is taking away a burden from them, that you're actually doing something that either they would do badly or not at all, but they know that it would need to be done, but you are doing it and doing something well that they're not really able to do? Do you think that makes a difference?
Yeah, it does. It does, definitely.
I think that's something we always hear from government, right? That something that is important to them is to see proof, right, Andrea, to your point, that to see that someone's intervention has a demonstrated impact. That can be really difficult to demonstrate in certain situations, right? There's another thing that can counterbalance that is to speak not in the name of an organization, but that of a collective, right? So I think it links a bit to what Andrew is doing as a work, right, to bring different parts of society together. And that's how you can get the ear of your government counterpart at every level more easily. But I would just want to emphasize what I think, Doris, you've been saying, is that the importance of constant contact and use all of the possible excuses that you have to pull in people from the government that you are working with in with you, right? Like the events, like the emails, whatever, like all constantly, so they feel that they have a relationship and that you're a team. But like Doris, you were speaking about like operationalizing programs and so on. Here we have Andrea, who is trying not to share, but also has to share a bit of her experience. Was tremendous experience with working with government operationalizing things with them. Do you want to share a bit, Andrea, what's emerging from you?
Well, I feel as though the people taking part in this are more important. But very briefly, we run and manage, Rights for Health runs and manages the vehicles for the Ministry of Health to enable consistent, reliable delivery of healthcare to every part of those countries in which we work. And I see this really as why would a Ministry of Health have the competence to run and manage vehicles for very difficult environments? And we train all our programs are run and managed, and the leadership is African leadership and managed all the way through at the national level. We don't do anything operational within those countries. So it's very important that from our point of view, that we looked at the problem that those ministries of health had in getting to rural communities. They didn't have enough vehicles, they didn't manage them well, they weren't maintained well. So that was the part that we took over, because we have that ability to have that expertise. I'd just love to hear from someone else, but what I was interested in, and I'd love to hear from Andrew about whether his work is operationalized, or if you're trying to change policy only, rather than lifting a problem away from the government. I see those two things as changing minds and changing policy, and then but trying to do that from an operational point of view, where you're lifting a burden away from a ministry or from a government.
I'm just going to interject very quickly. I think there's another way also to work with government, is to change practice, right? So to also help our governments like upskill and learn, like perhaps tested way that we've developed here, the principles, the way that we work, we think, and transfer that to them, so it stays with them, and it changes the way things operate within government. So one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Dixoni, moment.
What is Sandra?
Can you repeat? There he is. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you working with government at the moment?
Yes. No. I'm working with an NGO, but we have the project that we are working on. We are cooperating with government.
I didn't quite hear that.
Okay, I'm working with NGO, but the project that we're doing, we have collaboration partnership with government.
And so what have been your challenges or your learnings?
Okay, thank you. The challenge and learnings whilst working with government, I learned in 3 areas. The first one is government institutions. They understand that the NGO are there for providing, supporting government institutions activities. That's a challenge, that's the risk. The second one, government official workers, they really not understand that working with NGO is a voluntary basis. So they really understand that we have big salaries, we have good housing and everything. So they tell, once you call them to come to the project implementation, they will ask for funds, for money. Oh, that's also the challenge. But again, they have worked us from the community. They ensure that we are therefore providing funds to the community members. So sometimes we find little difficulties once we are working with the communities on the ground. So that's the challenge. But the benefits of working with the government is that they provide you with accreditation to ensure that the progress and activities that you are doing align with what they give, and they're able to recommend and give some feedback. Over to you.
Thanks for sharing, Emmanuel. I think that what you brought up also here, with another thing, is one important question also, that of money. In the collaboration with government, right? Because we're all working with strange business. There's a lot of nods. So do you want to share how you've been experiencing and navigating that, the people who have been nodding and smiling when I spoke of money? Like, how do you resolve the money issue in your relationship with government? Teresa, you want to give it a go? I saw a big bright smile.
Well, it's a thing that we've not yet resolved. It's not fully resolved yet. I don't know if we'll ever resolve it. Sometimes you're required to like launch a project, and then a government official must be present, and they insist they must have a facilitation fee to come. And it's part of their work. I mean, it's in their job description to come and launch that project because it's happening in their department. I mean, but so what we've done is there are times when we put our foot down and just told them that we don't have any budget allocation. Our donor does not cover those kind of costs, so we are not able to. But we invite you to attend, and if you're not able to, send a representative, because sometimes what happens is if you don't pay that facilitation, then they send somebody else. And for us, as long as someone has come and there's representation from the ministry, we'll just quote it in our program narrative that there was representation from the ministry, and that's it. But some cases we've also opted to instead pay directly for the services rather than give them the facilitation fee. Like, for example, if they say they want a facilitation fee to attend a meeting, we tell them we'll pay for the accommodation for you to come and attend the meeting, or we'll fuel the car, and we actually fuel the car so that we have the receipts for that. So we look for workarounds so that we don't actually issue money, because now that becomes, yeah, it raises now ethical issues. So we've tried to work around it, but of course there's still cases where they really insist, and yeah, so we
There
just
are
left
two questions.
Yeah.
Questions, Doris. Do you feel it's important to, before you even start working with the government, that you have a financial model? Because two of the problems that I think exist are, one, of course, that budgets in government are very tight. You know, there's a lot for them to cover, and we understand that, but also there's a lot of donor dependence, that there's a sort of overhang from the sort of old NGO model where people were going to come in from wealthier countries and pay money, pay for things in a way that social enterprise can't do. That if you have a financial model, you present it and try to, one of the mind-changing things for me, it seems to be getting people out of the donor dependency model. I wonder if what you would say about that.
Yeah, I agree that that kind of mind shift would be really helpful. And one thing I've seen, like in one of the sectors within Kenya, I'm not operating in that sector. What they did is that they came together as nonprofits in that sector, and they actually did voice, this is our agreed statement on how we will be operating with government with relation to money. A, B, C, D, and that was it. And it was very clear, and the government, and there's nothing they could do. The government had to just accept. It became like, when you do it collectively, it has more power, it has more force, it has more influence, and it has worked. So I would think having such a model would be brilliant, really.
Yeah,
really interesting what you're just sharing. Again, the power of the collective and setting the rules, right? Because we often are thinking that we just have to follow the rules, but also setting the rules in the agenda, and of course, with the relationship of respect, it's really interesting. And the question of ethics you raised also earlier.
Sorry, I'm saying Andrew.
You were speaking of ethics. I think it's also a big question, like when there's a relationship with government, right, Andrea? I don't know if that was the second question you had in mind, but that of corruption, ethics. What actually is the space for money? There are people who say that there shouldn't be money at all in the relationship with government, because then the risk of potential like consequences that people say, oh, that's a corrupt relationship and so on. So we have all of those very rigid other consequences way to operate in often, which are like all of those tenders, and some it is also difficult and for small enterprises to be able to win them and compete with a big very well-funded corporations that can win them. So big question, money. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts to offer around that, and perhaps the ethic of the relationship with government.
Andrew rose his hand.
Yeah, I will keep it really brief. Thank you. So in my work, I like to make the distinction between what I would call a formal engagement and a substantive engagement. A formal engagement will be a tick box exercise. Let's bring government in, let's bring civil society in, just to tick the box that they were here, you know. And a substantive engagement would be ensuring that the people that are around the table have a voice, you know, in shaping the agenda and the outcomes of what is discussed. So for me, you know, my experience is that when we take the substantive routes and engage government in good faith and with the intention of building partnership rather than making them mere recipients of what we are bringing, you know, I think it changes something. It changes them being passive to offering something. They might not bring the money, they might not have the money given their tight budget, but they do offer something, whether it's about commitment to, okay, whatever comes out of this, we will institutionalize or we will scale or, you know, we will drive. They do have something and they have a lot of power, you know. But I guess it's how do we enable a sense of ownership in that intervention from the beginning, and not go do your own thing at the corner, then bring the solution to government and like, oh, we have been doing this, now we know what is working in your community, just implement. That sort of relationship doesn't tend to work. So and it takes time to build this substantive engagement. You know, it's difficult, but I think that is what is required, and that is what often shifts the needle. And to your question, Andre, about when we do engage, typically our work is funded by philanthropies and civil societies. Sometimes, you know, I think a very little amount of our revenue comes from work done directly to government. But I think in all of our processes, the government are key stakeholders. You know, and I'm thinking of one particular example. We did work last year when I was leading on the project for the World Resources Institute, and the intention was to build an African-wide agenda or a platform to enhance water resilience in African cities. You know, and I think at the end of that engagement, we built what we call the Aqua platform, the African Cities Water Adaptation Platform. And the intention is to coordinate, align, harmonize, and scale existing programs, expertise, and solutions across a wide network of partners to drive the idea of urban water resilience in African cities. And already we are working with six cities, I think in three countries, in Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, 6 cities. And I think there's about 100 million in the fund. They call it the catalytic fund, to sort of coordinate and support this effort. This money is not going to government directly, but the issue of water, as you know, it will be a big problem. So it alleviates, it helps the government in some way. Hence why, you know, in these cities, the mayors are intimately involved in the project. The civil society, academics, you know, everyone, you know, are involved in this project because they see from the beginning that this will benefit them, and we are working with them as partners. They are not funding the project. The World Resources Institute is funding these initiatives, but they are intimately involved from the beginning.
Thank you so much for sharing. Very interesting, Andrew. That's also one of the things, like value of government is not necessarily into funding, right? Often it's easier to get into a relationship with government. Actually, we're saying we don't need your money, right? Because that might be, I don't know if you experienced that, but that might be the first objection, right? We don't have money, we don't have a budget, right? So now you're like, yeah, we're not here to like ask for money. We don't see you as a bank, but we're here to try and see how we can support you and your work. They relax, right? I don't know. Doris is smiling. It looks like a shared experience. Anyone else in the room want to share some of their experience, learning, challenges, questions, thoughts that they have about this relationship with government and also multilaterals, if you want? Bernard, go ahead. Feel free to jump in.
I think I have a question for all of you. Because I do see that governments are in a really tough position. I mean, there's a finite amount of dollars available, And so they have competing funding requests, and they may not have policy to support something that is new. And I think one of the things that I've seen to be most impactful is when we are able to provide informed decisions to government, not only about our specific need, but also how the community itself and the citizens who live there, how they have prioritized. And because I think it's tough, I just think it's tough that they don't always have the data to make the best decisions. So my question really is, how do you do that? How do you ensure that the government that you're working with has the information they need to make the best decisions?
Jessica, I think you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a quick note, and sorry, apologies, I can't, I was just saying my Wi-Fi is pretty choppy here, so I've just left my video off. But it's lovely to see you all, and I wanted to jump in on Brenda's comment, just as a fellow Canadian, because we do work with Canadian government. It is a challenge sometimes, of course, but one thing I wanted to mention about budgets, although I find it's very sustainable, part of Pathfinders, our social enterprise, our model is including government in this trilateral model of working with academia and social entrepreneurs, because the overarching goal should always be, I think, to affect policy at the highest level. Otherwise, you're kind of operating in silos, right? So we want to get conversation with government. We want to get government on board. But there's one thing I think that as much as it's sustainable in getting policy impacted at the highest level and in terms of affecting real change, there's also something not so sustainable about government in the sense that government changes, right? So government changes, it could be every 5 years, or it could be, whatever the mandate is. But the problem with that is that their priorities change as well. So when we've worked with Canadian government in the past, as much as the funding was really positive, it was for a finite amount of time, and it was and the project had to fit into a very specific scope or focus. And so sometimes working with government means that you actually have less flexibility, even if you might have more money, but it can also be less sustainable. So from one year to the next, when the Canadian government changed a few years back, the priorities changed. And we were found with, your effective funding or your call is up. And then that essentially means that you need to look to other sources of funding. So as much as government does hold a lot of that money, it is only it can only kind of go as far as that priority or that social issue or social causes at that moment, right? So I find there's something to be said about that, and we need to be mindful of that. So I think we can work with government, but it shouldn't be the only means of funding or the only means of sort of let's say support of a project, right? And I don't know, and sorry, Nat, I don't know if that's the case in every government. It certainly is the case with Canadian government, which is I have to add a predominantly, relatively stable government that doesn't change every few years. But I would just say again, it's a priority of whatever the platform is of that governing party, and so we have to be mindful of that, I think, when working with government.
Yeah, I think that administration change is really critical, and I'm sure everyone working with government finds that, and then of course getting your own budget, the budget that you require into the annual budgeting of the particular ministry or the set of ministries that you're working with. So I think that getting your budget in, as well as them wanting to see your work continue, your initiative continue, I think is really a very difficult part of working with government.
Thank you everyone for I just wanted to share that we are going to be closing the session in 15 minutes because there's a headline session at 4, and we'll be asked to free you so that you can attend. So make sure that you use all of those 15 minutes to share or what you want to share, and drop the questions that you want to drop to each other. We're all here to learn from each other. So feel free to unmute and share anything you have. Otherwise, we can continue. We were speaking about money, by speaking about ethics, speaking about how to start the relationship with governments, how to maintain this relationship with governments, the different approaches to that, different purposes also of working with government, I think.
Well, it's also important to hear examples of the kinds of organizations that are working with government. What kind of, is this about policy change? Is this about programmatic change and practical, relieving the government of some burden that they really have had and never had a solution to? So we'd love to hear from anyone who just has an experience of working with government and in what way. So we'd love to hear that.
Plus, I can jump in on the way to work with government that we have not touched on much, which is a way that we is to train, right? We train government representative in learning new mindsets and new practices, right? So that they can then use that within the government and shift the way they've been doing things, because often the entire sectors are already existing as part of government competency. Like I've been working in the tourism sector for the past 8 years, working to transform it. Well, this is a sector where government is very much in the driving seat, right? And there's a lot of things that are not done properly, but government is eager to change, but they don't know where to start, right? And so they're really, really happy to learn from people who have been able to create new ways to do things that have a proven impact, right? So that's another way to work with government, and that's a way that can be monetized, right? Because, well, you can charge for training, you can charge for workshops and that kind of things. And you don't necessarily need to have only government people in it, right? You can have several people, different kind of stakeholders in the same training, and you can do that in partnerships with like organizations, multilaterals, and so on that are holding the workshops, right? So that's a different way also, I think, to be able to work with government and have a concrete long-term impact. Just to try and explore those different ways to share the knowledge that you have developed.
I think, I think what you're saying, Valeria, is really important, and we haven't said yet actually that Valeria and I and Jessica also are in working group 6 for Catalyst 2030, which is really the headline of that is working with government and working with the UN and how to do those things and how to make the shift. So we'd love it if all of you could join that group, because we think it's really important, and to bring your experience would be very, very valuable. But also it's just making me think that in working group 6 we should start to outline what are the ways that people are working with government, and so that we can bring other people in, because as you say, there's training, there's lifting burdens away, there's changing policy, and there are so many different ways, and there are so many new social entrepreneurs coming into the sector, and it might be really helpful for them to hear that there are specialists in each of those areas that they can come to learn from, and all of you are others can new people to the sector can learn from. So I think we should think about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Also because I think one of the biggest enemy that we all have is our inner voice that says, who is it that I am to work with government? Oof, it's too hard and so on. Well, we just had a conversation and we said that a lot of it is actually spending time with people, right? Just human to human connection, forgetting about the big thing behind that is government, and just realizing those are people. And often people really care and really want to change things, and they're doing it from an environment that is different from us, that comes with its sets of challenge, but still want to listen. The other one, we don't need to speak with them. We let them, our champions, take care of them. But I think that's something that's really important, this imposter syndrome. Be like, okay, working with government also starts by just striking a conversation. This is already working with government, right?
But it's also great to hear from Doris, from Andrew, from Brenda and others, just to every continent has different issues, of course, about working with government. They all have common issues. So I think that's another useful thing that I've learned from this, listening to everyone. So that's really helpful too. And I know Urban and Boy have not contributed yet, but I just wondered if either of them, before we shut down, have anything to say or to bring. Oh, and Magali as well. So I don't know if any of you want to say something before we end in 5 minutes, but please feel free if you do. No, they don't.
I'm seeing Urban in the room. I'm curious. Urban, come up. Tell us why you're joining us. What is it that you're hoping to take from this time with us?
Hello, thanks so much for the lovely discussion. I just joined at the end, so because I was just managing another session as well. But I was very curious, as this topic is something that I've been studying during my last year at the master's as well. And it's specifically how we can, and I'm very grateful I joined in the last couple of minutes, because this has been addressed, how we can really work with governments and go beyond this sort of barrier that we impose ourselves in terms of, the government is something that we can't reach. So I was very curious on this question particularly.
Thank you.
Well,
so what?
Go on, Valeria, please.
I just wanted to say, tell us, what did they teach you at school? What did they tell you about working with the government at school?
Well, we haven't had a proper discussion about this, but it was mainly about ecosystem enabling and how we can leverage everyone in our ecosystem, including the government, to bring out collective action and decision making, right? So not just top approaches, but really looking at local initiatives and bottom-up approaches, and how can the government do that and policy making.
Thank you. Andrea?
No, I was just saying, thinking of saying to Urban that it would be helpful if you joined our Working Group 6 sessions once in a while, because I think that we may be able to learn from you and from you to learn from the others in the group. One of our members is Jacob Matthew from India, who works with very large areas of India, and his experience is very, very valuable. So please join at some time so that we could have co-learning.
I would love to. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'd love to. I think there's a lot to learn from the group, so thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple more minutes. Boy or Magali, please speak up if you're there.
Otherwise, why don't we go into a round of the room, sharing a major takeaway from this session? Yeah. Should we start with Brenda? What's your takeaway from today, or the thing that we wish we had addressed that we did not? You're on mute.
I need to pass right now, just because I'm still.
Okay, we'll come back to you after.
Data overloaded week, especially too, eh?
Oh, really? Yeah.
But this has been very impactful for me. I just want you to know that it's been really great listening to all of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whereabouts in Canada are you based, Brenda?
I'm very close to Niagara Falls.
Oh, are you? Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jessica is raising her hand.
Yeah, I'm happy to just jump in on just a takeaway. I think I touched on it very briefly, but I just wanted to say first of all, I love these conversations because it's always insightful to see what's going on around the globe, and also to know that we share a lot of the same challenges as well of working with government. So I think, you know, an underlying theme here is the pace, and that's okay. It's always a frustration, but the benefits can be enormous, right? They can be huge. I think when you're working with government, I think you're inevitably affecting policy, right, in some ways. So I think that's a huge bonus. But I think there's just, my takeaway would be to make sure that there's a balance and not completely having the call, or let's say, you know, whatever the you know, the funding call is, or the contract is with government, having that dictate what the project is that you're working on, or what your priorities are as an organization are. Because sometimes just being able to work with government or partnership with government is so appealing that you tend to, I think for a lot of NGOs or social entrepreneurs, you tend to fit into their model. And I think what we need to understand is find that balance of, you know, getting those contracts, but also understanding what our power is and what our strengths are as, you know, these grassroots operations, that we know best what the social issues are on the ground, and that we should inform those calls, and that's how those calls should be created. So I think having a voice at that top level and finding that balance is key.
It's great what you're saying, Jessica. Yeah. Can I just say that on us, like with the government I'm working with, like they are like 100% agreeing with that, right? So many times they're like, yeah, adamant with the fact that, yeah, we don't know what's happening at the community level. We need you guys for that, right? We need to work with people who are on the ground to understand that it's essential to us. So just to connect with this sentiment of us having this potential imposter syndrome, and so on, like, oh, like many government people know that they do need to work with us, right? They just need us to have the courage to reach out, right? And find them. That might be a bit difficult, but often it's on the website. You have to do a bit of digging, but you find all the contacts. It's everywhere there. But many are very much aware of what Jessica just mentioned.
Well, I think it's also a great way to end a session like this with a quote from Jessica saying, "Know your power." That's really good. Yeah.
And know the power of the relationship.
I also thought that that Doris's comment about, you know, patience and not giving up is something that all of us know is key to what we all do.
Yes. Sorry, I was distracted. Can you repeat, Andrea, your takeaway? I want to hear your takeaway.
No, it was really, you know, I love Jessica's comment about knowing your power, but also from Doris and from Brenda too, about not giving up and having patience. And my own message is always think about the money, your mission and the money. Never forget the money.
Nice. Absolutely important. And be creative with it, right?
Be creative with it. Yeah, absolutely.
I also think that I took from Andrew in our conversation the importance of the collective. Actually, that was reinforced also.
Yeah.
I think through the story of Doris, like the importance of collective and remembering mindsets, the need of changing mindset, because you also have changing government, so the policy can disappear. I just want to build on that and say, we were speaking of building relationship at all levels of government. That should also include the people who are the technocrats, because they don't go anywhere. And so we can have long relationships for 30 years with them, and they're always going to connect us with their new bosses and partners. And I think it's really, really important. And they're always happy to have coffee. They are the real wheels of governance. So very important people for us.
Okay. Well, before we close, is there anyone who has a very urgent thing to say? If not, we thank you all, and really, I really have valued this conversation and enjoyed it as well. So thank you all very, very much indeed.
And you saw that was number one. We're aiming to have more. So join the working group 6, and we'll have many of those. We'll have regularly some of those on the agenda. Okay. As long as we know that we're providing value, we'll keep them coming.
Yeah.
So let us know.
Thanks, everyone. This has been great.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. So nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Andrea and Valeria and everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Andrea, you want to stay a minute?
Sorry, Valeria.
You want to stay just for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
How did you?
I think, do you want to stay just you two, because I think
yeah,
if I end the call, it will end for everybody. So
yeah, you can jump out, and we need to there you go. Do that. I just did that without and we can end the recording also. I can remove you if it's easier. No, you should be able to. You should be able to remove yourself. We can call each other on the phone.
Okay.
Sandra, if it's easier. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting, the session. So thank you. And it was so nice to see people interact with each other.
Wasn't it nice? Really nice.
Yeah.
And what was lovely was people from all over the world, you know, Canada, Africa. It was really great. I really thought it was great. So thank you, Viola. Very grateful to you for your part in it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.